Head on home. Oh, I'm so glad to see Joe Jones in this house. Joe is a very, very good friend of mine and the president and founder of what I believe, and this is a bold statement, but I believe it's the most effective local nonprofit organization working on issues of workforce development and restoring particularly men of color, men and boys of color that I've encountered anywhere in the country. He's a national leader in workforce development, fatherhood, and family service programming. Prior to founding the Center for Urban Families in 1999, Joe developed and directed the Men's Services Program for the Baltimore Healthy Start Initiative and became the Baltimore affiliate of the nationally recognized Strive Employment Services Program. His work with CFUF focuses on empowering low-income families by enhancing wage earning ability and helping men fulfill their role as fathers. He's received numerous awards and honors for his leadership and programming, served on President Obama's task force on responsible fatherhood and healthy families. In fact, the president visited CFUF and to applaud them firsthand. He's a board member of the Open Society Institute Baltimore, the Baltimore Workforce Investment Board, and the National Fatherhood Leaders Group. He's recently been profiled on national news multiple times. I believe CNN here, all kinds of different capacities. A community advisor on fatherhood to Vice President Al Gore, contributed to First Lady Bush's, Laura Bush's Helping America's Youth Initiative. He's a Weinberg Fellow and a graduate of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Most importantly, he's happily married and has 3 children, and is really one of my main inspirations in any work related to communities who need help most. Let's welcome Joe Jones, please.
How's everybody? Y'all started to get real deep in here towards the end. I was like, man, am I in the right place? It's supposed to be faithfully. Y'all not supposed to get that deep, are y'all? Listen, Joshua and Michelle, right? Joshua, thank you for your vision to create the values partnership. Thank you for the opportunities you created for me, the space you created for me to be able to do the work that I'm doing in Baltimore and the space that you created for others. This conversation, I got here right at noon. So Dr. Bello, I heard your comments. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for the things that you're doing and the inspiration you're providing to others and the inspiration you're providing to me for my comments. Because I don't have a clue what I'm getting ready to talk about. So you just know you got to have some faith, There are a couple of things I want to establish, in the few minutes that I have. The loss of faith and hope. When you lose those 2 tools, the likelihood that you can give to yourself and to others is greatly diminished, right? And we have some folks in our society who are beyond marginalized. They are acutely marginalized. Joshua mentioned this whole notion of peonage. That was back in the day. But today we have zero tolerance policies, right? Broken glass, stop and frisk, that have sucked large numbers of our family members out of communities and dropped them into criminal justice systems, right? Which largely exits them out of certain segments of the labor market, right? From which it is very difficult, if not impossible, for them to recover. So any species, dog, cat, human, plant, will do what's necessary to survive. And so we put people in situations where they have to figure out how they are going to make it. And this young lady, who's a graduate of our program, who has one hell of a story, but the most profound thing she ever said to me was, hurt people, right? Hurt people. So when you think about this intersection of human trafficking and civil rights, one of the most fundamental things I think, and it's been repeated, since I've been here, is this notion of father absence in our country, right? We have allowed ourselves to get to the point, and I really don't care about whether a mom or a dad doesn't get along, right? That's their right to not get along if they decide they don't want to be together. But a child has an absolute right to have a relationship with both parents, right? It's not up to us to decide whether or not that child should have a relationship with one or the other, right? So let me get off my soapbox for a minute, right? So, yes, okay. I got a while, huh? Josh only gave me 15 minutes. I'm going to be up here 15 minutes. Oh, there we go. All right. So let's go past it. Y'all know who I am now, right? Joe Jones, right? Okay. I got a simple name. It's like Joe Smith. Is that your real name? You must have warrants. When you got a name like Joe Jones and Joe Smith, you got to have warrants out, right? All right. So a little bit about me. Raised in Baltimore, I am absolutely someone who has been on the other side of the fence, right? I've been on drugs long time, right? Been in jail multiple times. Had a son out of wedlock who I wasn't responsible for. And I am a product of a relationship with the God of my understanding. Because there were times, right? Every time I got in the jail cell, you know what I would do? God, help me get out of this one, and I won't do it again, right? Do you know how many times I asked him, God, please help me get out of this? Not once did he ever turn his back on me, right? But I turned my back on him, right? But I didn't lose my faith, right? I was shaken, but I didn't lose my faith, and I had multiple people in addition to the God of my understanding, who didn't give up on me, right? Most of whom is my mom. And I'm going to end my conversation today about my mom, right? In the context of what it takes for us to really stick in there, right? With the most vulnerable of us, right? And, you know, each of us, you know, doesn't everybody here have a closet? I'm talking about a closet where you don't want nobody really to look in there, right? All of us have done stuff that we ain't gonna ever, we going to our grave with it, right? We might have a real good friend, right? But even that real good friend, you won't tell the whole story to. You give them 99% of the story, and 1% you gotta take to your grave, right? That's who we are. We're frail, we're human beings, right? So, yeah, I spent a little time doing that. But, you know, something's missing. Wait a minute, did I over? Okay, I think we're missing a slide. But I created the organization in 1999. Since then, we've helped about 27,000 people. We work in the areas, as Joshua said, workforce development, responsible fatherhood, family strengthening. And what's key about what we do is trying to leverage existing resources and be partners in collaboration. We heard that earlier today, this whole notion of collaboration. But as I go through this, this brief, presentation, I want you to understand that who I'm talking about here are those most marginalized people, right? And there's a subset of the folks that I'm talking about who are acutely marginalized, right? All right. What do you see there, right? This is a cartoon by a cartoonist named Steve Breen, right? And the caption is missing urban infrastructure, right? What you have is one father, and then what's symbolic is fathers are missing from our urban infrastructure, right? And we can't have whole neighborhoods and communities where fathers are missing, right? Because then our children become vulnerable to other people and other things, right? Little girls, right? I got three children, one of whom is my stepdaughter, right? And I met my wife. By the way, you know what? Next week I'll be married to this woman 25 years, right? And let me just mention Faith one more time, right? That fool dated me when she was working at the college, and I was in the last phase of a 1-year stay in residential drug treatment. If my daughter brought me home, I would have her committed, right? That woman took a chance. So when you talk about faith, you ever been in a dark place where you don't have all the data? You don't have a lifeline to your parents or a good friend, right? You just got to make a decision on faith, right? And women, I don't know, God gave y'all an extra dose of it, right? Because y'all been working on faith for such a long time, right? And we got to figure out how we use this innate thing that we have in us to be able to help the most vulnerable, so we can connect these dots and deal with issues around human trafficking and civil rights. So my organization is on Monroe Street in Baltimore, across the street from where Freddie Gray's funeral was held. 2 blocks down the street from Mondawmin Mall, the epicenter for the unrest, and 6 blocks away from where Freddie Gray lived and grew up, right? I went to the funeral, and when I walked over to the casket and I looked at this 25-year-old man, what I thought about as I walked over to the church, the entire world's media had descended on Monroe Street. The international media was there, right? Freddie Gray, how many people knew Freddie Gray's name before Freddie Gray died? I didn't know Freddie Gray, right? But how many people in here now, if you say Freddie Gray, you know exactly who we're talking about, right? So while he was on this earth, right, nobody recognized Freddie Gray. But in his passing, he brought the attention of the world to a cause and an issue that we have to grapple with as a society. So the big question for us now is, with this whole divide we have between police and community, right, which was the impetus for Freddie being encountered by the police, right, what can we do as a society? And I will tell you, right, I am not of the faith community in terms of, you know, being trained in theology, but I will tell you, for those of you in the faith community, you all have something that in the communities where I come from is so valuable, but it's underutilized, right? A lot of what we're dealing with is sort of like this trauma issue, right? And so much of it could be treated with mental health clinicians. We don't go to mental health clinicians, right? But what we would do is we would go and get pastoral counseling, right? So if we could really think about how we deepen our relationship with the faith community and use the tools that you already have, right, that don't cost a lot of money. Because where I come from, people can't pay for mental health counseling. They don't go to mental health counseling, but they would go to a person of faith, right? So let's think about how we can do this. So Freddie sacrificed, right? Freddie was sacrificed for us, right? And I hope that we can think about ways in which we can use this momentum, this space and time to really take the issues that we talked about here today and we'll continue on tomorrow to really use Freddie Gray and others, right? And keep in mind that what we have in our country right now is a groundswell of issues going around that our little children are watching, looped. How many times did you see Freddie Gray being encountered by the police and dragged into that, you know, that paddy wagon? How many times have we seen Walter Scott being slaughtered, right? How many times do you think our children have seen that, and children who don't have parents to help them process it, right? So we've got little children who are growing up watching, trying to figure out what the heck is going on. You know, this is not a video game. This is real life that we're watching now, right? And so we've got to really think through how do we take this moment to educate ourselves and make sure that we protect our children so they don't become vulnerable to any of the things that we care about when we're talking about here. All right, so here's a couple, I do want to mention a couple of data points, right? So I talked about the geographic location where we are, right? So in the 3 zip codes around where my building is, where Freddie Gray lived and was encountered by the police, where Mondawmin Mall is, where Coppin State University is, where Pimlico Racecourse is, there are approximately 2,400 men who owe more than $20 million and $26 million in back state-owed child support. You can't have that many people out of the labor force owing that much debt and think that a community can absorb it, right? It also happens to be the top zip codes where people released from incarceration come back to. So you overlay the debt with the fact that they've been exposed to the criminal justice system, which really exits them out of mainstream labor markets, right? You can see some of the reasons why we could have protests erupt into unrest in communities. And Baltimore is not an isolated situation. We have pockets of this going on across the country. So, we're going to change the narrative a little bit, right? Right? Yeah. Y'all not sure where the heck I'm going with this, y'all. So, one of the things that we think about when it comes to low-income dads is dads don't care. And Joshua, I was like, when you started talking about the whole thing about the CDC study and how dads really are engaged, right? I was getting pumped, right? Because I knew you was going to bring it. right? We can't allow ourselves to believe that we don't have the capacity to care for our own children, even when we're economically X'd out of certain places, even when our educational experiences are different than other people, right? Everybody that has a child that I've ever encountered has always wanted to do better by their child. Sometimes the life circumstances don't allow them to do so, right? So one of the things that we try to do is just change the narrative in terms of what dads are really able to do with their children. And we work with some really rough cats, right? And be honest with you, right? We target those who are the least likely to receive services. I got a team of people that hit the street and talk to guys where they are and bring them in, right? So what I want to show to you quickly is a little bit of how we approach helping guys to be parents, right? And how we do that is non-traditional. It's kind of sneaky, but it, you know, it is what it is.
They think that it means I need to contribute financially.
From somebody
They just don't believe that changing diapers is a part of parenting.
I just want to see who's going to be the champs and who's going to be the chumps.
We only got 3 minutes. Don't stick the baby. 45 seconds and counting. Chris looks like he's in the front. He's doing well. Everybody's working gently and proficiently because this is the loving, caring child that they love so much.
It's not a neck brace, man. Come on, man.
3, 2, 1,
We're flipping the script a little bit now. You know, now we want men not just to be providers and protectors. We want them to be nurturers.
Sometimes we have to do things. You can be sneaky, you know, but I need y'all to, you know, I need y'all to pray for me because that was underhanded, right? Where we create competition because no man, you don't want to lose to me, do you? I don't want to lose to you, and you don't want to lose to the next man, right? But if we do it in the context of helping people develop healthy skills, right, we can get this thing done, right? I think I'm missing a slide here.
They think.
So we missed a slide. I'm going to come back to this. This is my last slide. Somehow we're missing a slide off of here, right? But I want to give you an example of how what winning looks like and what can be done in this country to support even those who are least likely to be able to get into the labor market and earn wages that are sustainable and allow them to take care of their families. So we conceive this model that we call family stability and economic success. So what that basically means is I want to take him. What's your name? Your name. You can tell me your name. Joel, J-O-E-L. Michael. So we're going to take them off of any corner USA, right? And we're going to say that, you know, you spent a little time in jail. Not a violent criminal, right? Spent a little time in jail, right? Ambassador, I'm sorry, but you had to go too, right? And we're going to pull them in and we're going to tell them, regardless of where you are right now, if you do a certain set of steps, we're going to give you an opportunity to advance, right? And I wouldn't expect them to believe us right away, right? But we're going to put them into a system, right? And we're going to tell them they got to dress like I'm dressed right now, right? And it's non-negotiable, right? And let's be real clear. I hate wearing suits, right? But it is the tool I need to represent the organization I founded to get into the rooms that I need to be in to help be at the table around decisions that have to do with policy and inequality in our country. Otherwise, I don't get the respect. So just like Ray Lewis would wear a football uniform on Sundays, you don't see Ray walking around after Sunday with a football uniform on. So this is my gear for the game I play. And y'all got to wear that gear too, right? So what we did, we took them through this process to change the perception of how people see them, right? Then we went to employers. So what I'm going to give you an example of a guy named Rich Beatty. Rich is white, he's Republican, and he's an ex-Marine. Now, you can't get more rigid than that, right? White, ex-Marine, right, and Republican. I said, Rich, I want you to hire guys like them. Not the guys they are now, right? The ones we just described, right? Rich said, I'll give them a shot, but I'm only going to hire them on the hottest days of the year, he has a company called Mechanical Construction Corporation, Mechanical Construction Engineer Corporation. He said, what I will do, I'll take them in as laborers at $12 an hour, right? Hottest months of the year. If they make it through, I'll bring them on full time, right? I said, cool. In the back of my mind, I'm trying to see how I can construct another deal, right? So as the guys are going through this, right, I went back to Rich. I said, Rich, let's make a bet. I said, if they make it through, will you then invest in their additional training, right? Rich said, well, if the majority of them make it through, I'll take you up on it. Every night I had my staff calling them guys, y'all better show up, right? Y'all better show up. The guys showed up. So now what Rich has done, Rich has taken 14 guys, all like them, right? Not the ambassador, right? The other Michael, right? And he has paid for, so we put 4,000 to 6,000 into them going through our respective programs. Rich put another 8,000 to 12,000 into their 4-year apprenticeship in the building trades, right? They have graduated with journeyman's license, right? They made last year base salary $50,000, right? With bonus and overtime, they made $57,000, right? Derek Liggins, one of these guys, served 9 years in jail, right? Came out, married the mother of his children, right? And last year, they bought a house in East Baltimore, right? That's what the heck winning looks like, right? And what we want to do as an organization is to build those kind of opportunities for people systematically, right? And change the way in which we do human services, right? And you can't do that unless we got key partners, and you got to have faith and hope, because some days the stuff that I try, I ain't got a clue whether it's going to work, right? But I believe in my heart, right, it's the absolute right thing to do, even in the face of people telling me, well, you got to do a randomized controlled trial. Yeah, you got to have data and you got to have evaluation. But on the other side of the fence, right, sometimes what we do in terms of quantitative data doesn't tell what happens inside a person's heart. So you got to have the ethnographic balance to that to be able to determine what happens in the indigenous communities that will inform the way we need to advocate for certain policies to remove the barriers for helping people move forward. And then the last thing I want to share with you is this whole notion of, here's 2 black guys, right? It's 2 black, it's 2 black guys. I don't care, you know, we talked about the ambassador being on, you know, being a thug, right? That's 2 black guys, right? So Joshua mentioned that the president visited our center. So that person in between us, that's my mom. And that's my mom right before her 80th birthday, right? Now, the other side of this story is, my mom, I'm an only child, right? I have 2 half-sisters when my father remarried, and, you know, I got my 2 half-sisters. But my mom had 4 or 5 miscarriages. Then my sister was born. She lived a couple of months and she died. Then she had me. Can you imagine what that woman must have thought? And then her husband left her, right? And so she's 80 years old, so you can think about for the elders in the community, in our audience, you can think about the things you saw and experienced over the course of your life that we don't even really know about, right? So that connection to people who are elders in our community are important lessons for us to be able to learn. And so can you imagine how my mother felt when her only child was able to kind of turn his life around, and she got a chance to be between him and the first African-American president, maybe that we will ever know, right? And so after that visit, I was sitting at my mother's house, and she kept asking me, well, where's the picture with the president? I'm like, the man ain't even got back to D.C. yet, Mom. Just wait, right? She looked at me, and she said, thanks for breaking the cycle. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She told me for the first time, right, that my father left when I was 9, which I knew. Her father left when she was 9, right? And her mother's father left when she was 9. She said, thanks for breaking the cycle, because now my wife and I have been in a marriage that this year is 25 years strong. I had no clue about this, right? And so if we want to think about addressing this issue of human trafficking, the men in our community, all of us who are broken, y'all broken, you remember you broken, right? You're broken, right? The men in our community absolutely have to have a place at the table as it relates to strengthening families, right? Otherwise, you know what? We put them on the sideline, and they are going to play a game. The question is the game they're going to play going to be conducive for our children to grow up healthy and be in quality, safe neighborhoods and go through uninterrupted school, right? Or are we going to allow them to be marginalized further and destroy our communities? And I hope that the folks in this room who are part of the faith community really take up this whole notion of using your skills and your gifts and your training in terms of pastoral counseling to add to the conversations we're having about how we help communities to heal. The most emotional conversations I have with men is when we bring them into a room without other people in, closed door, and we ask them about their relationships with their own fathers, right? Men start to break down and cry, right? And they don't have spaces in our community to be able to do it. So they carry this baggage around, and we give the false impression that we're okay, and we're really not. And that translates into what we are able to do or not able to do with our own children, which keeps them from being preyed upon by the people who are engaged in human trafficking. Thank you.
Let's give it up for Joe Jones. Thank you so much.